Thank you, listeners, for joining us for today's Elko Live. A very special guest today, and our local lawmaker, Bert Gurr, and the Assemblyman in District 33 joins us at a very important time in Nevada history, and of course here in Elko County, but fresh from the governor's State of the State speech in Carson City, Bert. So welcome to the radio show, and we are anxious and eager to hear your thoughts about not only the governor's speech, but some of our local issues as we head into this session on February 3rd.
You know, Lori, it was a very bipartisan speech. I thought he was trying to pull us all together when he's outnumbered in the legislature tremendously. He had a lot of important points, I think. One of them is the permanent school teacher raises and how much he wants to spend for schools across the state. In general, there wasn't any specific point that was, to me, make any difference. If we can get the Democrats to cooperate, it'll all make a difference statewide. There were no particular rural issues other than trying to get telemedicine, more health care, reaching out to the rurals, trying to get things accomplished to help rural students, which I hope includes the Ely School. We're going to work on that some more. But I talked to the treasurer of the state of Nevada when I was down there this week, and he's willing to sit and talk and try and brainstorm a way to get Ely's school done. He told me that there were many people working on this issue, the financing side of it, so we maybe will get something accomplished this time. And the speech in general was very promising to me and led me to believe that we have a governor, which I knew in the past, but the governor that's really working for the people of the state of Nevada, and not just the people in Las Vegas or Reno or the Republicans or the Democrats, the people for the whole state. So I was not pleasantly surprised, because it doesn't surprise me at all he's that way. Great guy, great governor, working hard. We were privileged to have a meeting an hour before the speech with him, and I left that really, really confident that he's on our side, the people's side of the state of Nevada.
So if we dive into some of the local issues that you're really familiar with, this is what I think would be helpful to local listeners. You know, we could easily lump air service development into economic diversification. You know, he mentioned the success of huge sporting arenas, Las Vegas, and how they thrive on visitors. And we in Elko County would love to hop on a plane and go see and enjoy some of these efforts.
Absolutely. And hopefully that will get through the Assembly and the Senate and go forward this session. He's been in support of it. He just couldn't find the money to put it into our side of the ledger, but we're working on it.
Yeah, his budget was released late on Wednesday, I believe, and I don't know if you've had a chance to eye it. I have not looked at the governor's budget.
It's $12.6 billion, I think.
Yes.
It's a huge number in my mind. $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and pretty soon you're talking real money.
But he's setting aside about $1.3 billion for the rainy day.
Already set aside $1.3 billion in 4 years, from almost zero to $1.3 billion. He's done a great job being frugal about what he does. I think one of the things that I believe he mentioned in the speech, I know we talked about it in the meeting before, is cutting boards and commissions.
He did talk about that.
That don't need to be there. Some of these commissions haven't met for over 2 years, and yet they have a staffer person signed to them. So there's a cost involved. So he's really pretty hard on that. And he's working. That was one of his priorities when he was talking to the Senate and Assembly Republican caucuses. So that's a big deal. It's a big deal to me. The ineffective boards and commissions shouldn't be there.
Well, and obviously, too, I think in planning for the unknown, the unforeseeable in the future, tariffs, there is a lot of concern, conversation. I mean, tariffs don't benefit small businesses, Bert. I know you're aware of that. So there are some concerns about how that could impact Nevada. I mean, just tariffs on liquor alone, or other items that small business owners import.
Yeah, tariffs have pluses and minuses, and I've not studied it enough to really know, but in my opinion, if we stop funding other countries, stop giving them all our money, and start concentrating here in the United States on what we need to get done, it may not need to be tariffed. You know, we spend an awful lot of money on our enemies, and I realize that we can't just cut everybody off, but we need to concentrate and focus here. Whether tariffs help or hurt is going to be up to the economists. One side says yes, one side says no. I'll let them discuss that. And when we get to the point where if it ever comes down to our level, then we'll get into it. But that's a federal level, and it would hurt liquor imports. By the way, speaking of liquor imports, I had a meeting about my pecan punch bill with the new manufacturer or distiller for Amir. Lives in Nevada, has a distillery in Reno, And we will be putting on documentaries that they've done. There's a lot of stuff going to happen. There's a lot of moving parts in this pecan bill for a one-sentence bill. But yeah, so we've got Amir's not going to get tariffed.
Because it's local, exactly. It's local.
It's going to be produced in Reno.
Long live the pecan punch. Assemblyman Bert Gurr is introduced, or will be introducing this bill to make the pecan the state drink. So that's also one of the considerations. Something else that we learned about just Tuesday, Bert, and so I don't have any numbers. Obviously, there's still a lot in motion with the session opening February 3rd. But Dr. Amber Dinelli from Great Basin College, the president, talked about a bill that would level the funding formula for higher ed. Apparently, it would benefit all community colleges. It's revisiting an issue that hasn't been dealt with for 10 years, and it has the support of universities. So I wondered if you...
I haven't seen it.
Haven't seen that one yet?
Don't know anything about it. But speaking of Amber, Wednesday evening, she and...
Sarah Negretti, her vice president,
and Christina Erling were sitting at my desk with me. And between introducing and bringing in all of the officials and the governor being able to speak, one of the legislators sitting 2 desks behind me, down from me and above me, fainted. I went out just cold. Before I could even turn around and look, Amber was right there. She did a yeoman's job, stayed with her through the whole thing, got the person when they finally, got through the crisis. But Amber was there right and did a great job. Kudos to her. She was tremendous. And I heard it was the 3rd time in about 3 weeks she's had to do this in meetings.
We don't have information about that lawmaker's condition, but apparently collapsed at the onset of the address. Our local Great Basin College president, Dr. Amber Dinelli, who has that's where she started. She earned her nursing credentials at GBC, right. Went on to earn her titles, and now she's the president of the college. She ran the nursing program for several years, but she administered first aid.
She did. There's, Dr. Robin Titus is in there too, and she got there in a hurry. And a fire chief, these are all Republicans. A fire chief from Vegas, John Steinbeck, who is now a state senator, just newly elected. They were all there, just in a flash. So it's very heartwarming to know that we have somebody, that we had people in the building that could take care of it. And when I know the person pretty well, and when they were wheeling the person out in a wheelchair, went right by my desk, and that person looked up and said, "Oh, hi, Bert." I said, "This is a hell of a way to get out of listening to the speech." She just laughed. So I think she's doing okay.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah. And I think it does really underscore the significance of having a citizen legislature, Bert.
Absolutely.
These are people that work and live in our communities and contribute in life-saving ways at times. Wow, what a stunning story, and thank you for sharing it with us. And again, much appreciation. Dr. Dinelli would never toot her own horn.
No.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. So talking about being at the right place at the right time, another reason to really appreciate the president of Great Basin College, Dr. Dinelli.
Absolutely.
One thing that was talked about, Bert, and that was the governor's proposal for the Tough on Crime, Safe Streets and Neighborhood Act, restoring law and order, apprehending repeat offenders. And that does seem to resonate with especially rural law enforcement, because these one-size-fits-all policies are harmful to rural communities.
They don't do any good for the rural communities, and it resonates with the metropolitan areas now, too. Everybody realizes that he was the sheriff of Clark County, so he understands the law enforcement side of it really well. He gets it. With the lax enforcement we had over the previous 4 years, we need to tighten it up. We need to get these guys off the street. It's just insane that we keep turning people out. And I haven't been reading the arrest reports lately. I've been a little busy, so I don't have to entertain myself that way. But when you see repeat offenders time after time, people who've been released after doing heinous things, just released, turned out on the streets, you kind of go, well, that's not justice. The victims are still getting victimized. That's not fair, and I think our governor is paying close attention to that.
And we can, courtesy of the Nevada Independent, our statewide online news service, quote, the Independent is saying the Nevada District Attorneys Association, which is composed of state prosecutors, including our very own Tyler Ingram, they support governor's proposals and align with the mission to protect the rights of crime victims while ensuring justice is served in our courts. Obviously, there will be pushback from organizations like the ACLU, and we'll just see how Democrats pick that up. These have serious economic impacts, too. too.
Yeah, when a person can walk in and take $1,000 worth of stuff out of a store and not be prosecuted for it, what's to stop it? I mean, how many little businesses can handle that once a week? I mean, there goes everything. You're done. And you can't insure against that anymore, I don't imagine. How are you going to get that insurance? Speaking of which, fire insurance.
I was just going to say that was next on my list. You're getting great at these segues, Bert.
The governor's working hard on trying to keep our fire insurance reasonable. Whether we get it done or not, it's optional. Car insurance is out of sight, too. I'll bet I've had several about car insurance, health insurance, and fire insurance in the last 2 months. The fires continue to burn. You burn up, $250 billion worth of property. Insurance companies are going to go broke. There's no way to cover that I can see. The federal government sends money other places, so are we going to have the money to help them federally? But I know that the governor's on top of it, looking at it. They talk, according to him, almost weekly with these companies, so they're trying to help Nevada out anyway.
So we do know on Tuesday, our city mayor, Reese Keener, announced during city council meeting that he became aware that Farmers Insurance is canceling policies within city limits because they're lumping us into this wildfire risk.
Somebody took a paintbrush like they used to do with the water, with flood insurance.
FEMA.
And painted all of Nevada one color. They didn't do it on what's right and what's wrong. They just said, you're all at risk for fire. And we are. But downtown, we're not nearly at the risk as you are if you've got 40 acres out in Montello. This is a whole different risk, but they're not looking at that. And that's what prompted a lot of this stuff.
And J.J. Johnston, our city fire chief, said that if people are having trouble getting reinsured, to reach out to the city fire department for letters. He's been dealing with this issue, for some time. Yeah. And also, I think you'll find it interesting, newly elected councilwoman Marissa Lostra. She is a professional realtor, and she said also at the meeting, Bert, that they have the power of the realtors lobby, that this is an issue for them.
It has been, and they've been doing it. It seems like nobody talked to the governor about it until last year in a meeting I brought it up to Ryan Cherry on the insurance thing. They went, what? I said, yeah, the whole state's getting hammered with it because being a realtor, I've been told that too. And yes, the state realtor organization's working on it. Hopefully national will pick it up and use whatever influence we can get because once you stop insuring houses, you stop the whole market.
Well, you can't get a mortgage if you don't have insurance. That's
Absolutely.
Just the rule. Our local lawmaker is Bert Gurr. He's our assemblyman in District 33. So again, we're looking at some of the themes that were expressed during the governor's State of the State on Wednesday. Something that was mentioned during the governor's speech, and that does have to do with the permanent teacher raises and then open zoning for schools, which would help make it possible for parents to take advantage of school choice, Bert. But yes, we do know that transportation is an issue, and it's already an issue in rural Nevada, right?
It is, and it's an issue for charter schools, and they've worked toward that. They've improved that this last 2 years. And the governor is a big fan of charter schools. He really is, and he'd like to see them expand, along with the transportation and then the open zip code to wherever you needed to go inside another zip code. Makes some sense. I noticed the teachers in the room didn't applaud that a whole lot. Teacher legislators. Again, a lot of the stuff the governor brought up will come to us in a bill form of some kind if he's going to push it through that way, and we'll go through it more intently at that point.
So extending pay raises to charter school teachers is not something that the Democrats approve of, Bert, but especially in rural Nevada, I don't think that makes sense to a lot of people who say, well, teachers are teachers, and why aren't they being paid the same? Because they are considered part of the public school system at charter schools. Maybe not so much the private school, but we know that we have 2 of those here in Elko now.
Yeah, and I think the governor is adamant about it. He wants to make those raises permanent and equal to the other teachers. So whether or not he can get that accomplished depends on the public, the people inputting into their legislators what they want done, and then making it public that we've told our legislator in Clark County that we need this and we want this. A lot happens down there because the public's involvement is not there. And that's the saddest part of being a representative in this, is that issues come up, and I know that the public can't pay attention to it every time. But through your radio program and other media outlets and social media now, maybe they can start to get a hold of it. It's not just, and I think I said it before, these blank click and sign your name.
Original, unique comments, Bert, talking about how it impacts their lives.
It's much better if I can read. I realize you don't want to send me a letter, and I don't want you to send letters. I want you to, if you go to my website or go to the Assembly's email site, But if I'm getting from constituents information that they want to be heard, I will pay attention to it. I'll read it. My assistant attaché, whatever you want to call him, is going to make sure that they all get answered this time. So that it's not just my opinion that comes through in a vote, that I'm representing the people of my district, not myself.
And that's important communication, not only during the legislative session, but year-round. It can help shape the type of bills that you're proposing, the bill draft request that you put in. Let's do that. Let's dip into that issue a little bit, too, of so open zoning for schools, transportation, and the issue of local transportation. Don't know if anybody has reached out to you. There's chatter on social media. I'm sure you're well aware we don't have a taxi service in Elko. Yep. We don't have Uber. We don't have Lyft. All of these things require Public Utilities Commission oversight. And apparently, since we don't have even a Greyhound bus anymore, we really have a transportation desert. Yeah. And we don't want to undermine what Get My Ride does, but it's appointment specific. It's not on demand, and that's a very important designation. It's doing such great work for senior citizens, people with disabilities, veterans. We do not want to demean the role of Get My Ride, but it's not an on-demand service.
And I don't want to sound like I want the government to take care of the problem. I want the government to help take care of the problem. I don't want them to interfere with the business models. But we need something in Elko, and whether or not it takes some incentivizing like we do at the airport, or the airlines, not the airport, but the airlines. Some way, I truly don't I understand why the taxi business went out. Insurance, repairs to their autos, everything else. The business model just didn't work anymore. And if you're in Vegas, you don't see many taxis anymore. I mean, there's still a lot of them, but not nearly like they were. And the expense of getting a ride is incredible anymore. But that's the business model. If Uber wanted to come into Elko, could it survive? Is there enough demand for it? I don't know. It's like people say, well, we need a Costco here. Well, they can't afford to be here. It's just not big enough yet. And I know I sound like a broken record. People ask me, well, if you think it should be, push hard enough to get one. Go out and do it. If you want a Market Street Grill, if you want to pick any restaurant in the world, go see how it works to get it here. It's not just open the doors and run a business. It takes a lot of, and this is an issue, a lot of government regulation involved in it, and a lot of money to get them started. So we need the public to step up. We need the public to talk about what's going on. We need open discussion, dialogue with how we improve Elko. And I know that the chamber's working hard on it. I know everybody involved in business in Elko is working on it. So I'm just repeating what I hear. But we can't get it without public pressure.
Well, and that's an important point too, Bert. Ever since, I've been in this position on the radio in Elko, people have said, well, we have city officials who keep these businesses out because they compete with their personal businesses. And it's just simply not true.
Not true at all.
Costco, for example, says, well, we track our shoppers by zip code, and we know that this many people come from 89801 or Spring Creek or any area in rural Nevada. I mean, we cannot afford to build a standalone brick and mortar building, a Costco, when you guys are willing to drive here anyway. Now, if everybody stopped shopping at Costco from this zip code, then they might look again and look at the feasibility. But
and then they might not either. So
exactly.
And I heard it, oh my God, years ago when Franzoia was mayor, when Mike Franzoia. I was part of a couple of us trying to get the Cabela's warehouse into Elko, and Mike actually wrote a letter and tried to meet with him to get him here. And the feedback was, you're not big enough. We don't, even though you're on the rails and even though you've got trucks, it's not where we want to be. We want to be in Reno. We want to be somewhere else. And the feedback was that Mike stopped it.
And that was just the opposite.
Mike didn't stop it. And I don't know anybody on the commission or the city council that wants to stop business because it would interfere with their business. I know the rumors are out there. I know the stories are out there, but they're wrong. None of us. We all want business to grow. Without competition, we don't grow.
So are you, this is funny because we're talking about local stuff. We were almost running out of state because it's still a work in motion.
Still nebulous. A lot of this stuff is just conversation, so there's no real meat to chew on yet.
Yeah, we don't want to get people too excited. But are you part of the Pecan Group? The People in Charge of Nevada. That's our local group. You're laughing about Pecan.
No, I'm not.
You're not. That's kind of a surprise.
I'm going to ask to be involved.
So People in Charge of Nevada is this ad hoc group, and it's local business leaders. It's an exclusive group. They meet, I think, weekly, but it is part of the process of influence in a community, Bert. So you might be able to be part of that group, you think?
So that's you don't have to be a pecan drinker.
No, you don't.
Oh, okay.
No.
All
It's
right.
a political. Mark Amadei is apparently, and I think they've since they started one in Elko, I think Carson City may have its own pecan group. Apparently, if you want your finger on the pulse of Elko politics, behind the scenes, making of the sausage, you need to be a part of Pecan. This is about the inner workings of how bills get made, right? Because often this is how the information gets passed on.
And how local politics influence state politics. And I've tried several times with different people saying, you've got to get a hold of me. You've got to, if you see something come through, let me know, as I will, if something comes through, like the Indian school bill, when it came out, I was on the phone with the county commissioners. And other bills went through that I didn't know. You can't see every bill. And I know that sounds silly, but we have over 1,000 already submitted right now. They'll get weaned down to probably 500 before we're all done, or 550. But still, you don't get to see all of them. I'm only on 3 committees. You can't be on too many committees, or you won't get anything done. And if they're not in my committee, I've got other people who are watching it, and we all watch each other's bills in other committees, so we can feed them into the caucus. But I don't get feedback from Elko about some of those bills that impact them until they're actually going to the floor, and I hear about it in caucus, and then we go and vote on them, and I don't have any input. So if any of the local politicians, anybody doing any local work, sees something, they need to get a hold of me. I had one recently, and we checked it out. It hasn't come out yet. We'll see if it does.
A lot of these, as Bert Gurr has mentioned, bill draft requests never see the light of day, and so that's an important consideration. We should know more in the weeks and months to come. The legislative session opens February 3rd, and we do know that your predecessor, John Ellison, along with State Senator Pete Goyachia, now former Assemblyman Ellison's been elevated to state Senate position with Senator Goygachia's retirement. That was a forced retirement, term limits. They used to have weekly calls, Bert, where constituents could jump on, and I don't know if that's something that you've been able to or thought about continuing.
Well, we've thought about it. I'm not sure how it's going to work yet. Like I said last time, we've got to wait until the session gets going to see where everybody is, what time works. The Senate works on a different schedule than the Assembly does, and so we tried to stuff it in between there, and a lot of times it didn't work, especially later in the session, because committees run over, floor runs late, you're just...
It's just busy, yeah.
But we are working on it.
Okay.
I know that the minority leader, Hafen, he wants to do it. He's a rural representative, too. He's got he's got the part of Nye County I don't. And unfortunately, they moved him to north in the parts of Las Vegas. But he's still really interested. So we're going to try and do something like that. It may be in a little different format. It may be like a town hall meeting, which is what it was before. But we may do video stuff, too.
Bert, thank you. And I do want listeners to know that our local lawmaker, Bert Gurr, knows that the phone works both ways. So he picks up the phone and calls when he thinks that there's an issue important to rural Nevadans, or at least to our area listeners. And we appreciate that relationship, and we'll do everything to honor that relationship and to support you in your endeavor. So thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate it, Lori. I appreciate your time and coming in on a fairly short notice and letting me.
One last thing I will ask about. The last time we met, it was very fluid, but we do have the Women in Fairness Sports Committee that the Lieutenant Governor formed. Since that time, we know that the U.S. Senate passed a bill changing Title IX, effectively. Where are we on that issue? Is there any news?
Really good question. Yeah, a really bad answer is don't know. They have a court in, I think, Connecticut threw out all of Biden's changes in Title IX for Connecticut. Don't know how that's going to go. Haven't heard how the Senate's going to work, or the House, the legislators in D.C. are going to work on it. So it's fluid. And the task force is still in place.
They met with the NIAA.
Yeah, that was a little weird. But yeah, they did. They met, and I don't know where that went. I heard it was fairly receptive, but it was Tuesday morning that they met with them. I couldn't attend, even though I'm on the committee task force. I was on my way down to Carson, or no, we'd gotten to Carson, but it was 9:30 in the morning or 9 o'clock, I don't know. The problem with a lot of these groups is their timing doesn't have anything to do with our legislative timing. So you can't get to stuff. It's like White Pine having Lincoln Day breakfast tomorrow. There's a whole bunch of people who went to D.C., Republicans, who would normally have gone to this.
They're going to be there for the inauguration.
They're going to be in D.C.
Yeah,
They won't be able to attend White Pines. And I know they had struggled getting people to come or getting even it organized. They didn't have one last year, which would have been a great year to have one because all of us were not in session. So I will be there in the morning to Ely to get that done. And the Ely folks are great people, and I love them to death. It's like a second, almost a first home anymore. I've been down in Ely probably 50% of the time I've been in Elko.
That's what a lot of people say about Ely, is that it's what Elko used to be like. So, yeah,
an awful lot. Maybe that's why I like it so much.
I think so, Bert. Thank you for your time, and we will catch up with frequency. You are welcome to come back on this program anytime that it suits you and your schedule. Okay. We appreciate you carving that out.
We'll probably be doing a lot of remote because I'm not going to come home much unless there's a real need.
And you can't fly between here and Carson City.
Yeah, you can't do what Las Vegas does.
Yep, they jump on a plane and they're home for the weekend. So,
yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Bert.
All right. Thank you, Lori. Appreciate your time.
You've been listening to a conversation with our local lawmaker, Elko Assemblyman Bert Gurr. He represents District 33, which includes Elko as well as White Pine County and other surrounding counties. Thank you for choosing our radio station for hometown news and local information. Find this program and other Elko Live editions archived online at elkoradio.com.